Okay, so we're continuing now. We finished Eisvav, correct? I think we're up to the second paragraph of Eisvav. So it's explaining the parallel here, the parallel of the respective virtues of Nisim that are hide in Teva and Nisim in Teva. This is reflected also in the respective virtues of Bittul, the Bittul of Yichudi Ilah and the Bittul of Yichud Tator. Each one has a Maila. The Bittul of Yichudi Ilah is that it permeates the person's Metzias. That's the very Chsodim, is that the person himself is reflective of the Bittul. You see it in him. And the Bittul, so therefore it's about him to some degree. You're impressed with the minister. And you understand why the king has chosen him by virtue of his own virtues. The mile of Yichud Tator or Bittul Hayesh is that the Bittul is despite him, not because of him. The Bittul is despite the Eved. The Eved, Avde Befkere Nichalei. And yet he's an Eved. So looking at the Eved, one sees the surrender to the Melech. It's despite him in a much purer way than in the minister. So each one has its milah. One is higher, one is more lightful, one is more such a word, revelatory, and the other, however, is deeper. And that is the same parallel between that explains the respective milas of Nisim that are higher than Teva, that's Bittul B'Metzias, and Nisim invested in Teva, that's Bittul Hayesh, or Yichud Tator, the lower unity. So concluding the point, second paragraph of Ois Vav, just one moment. He's speaking up on the last point, the Eved, who is doing something contrary to his will. So this is similar to Nisim that Amalubashin in Teva, Agam Shebitla Teva later in Tov Shebenisim Elu. Even on the one hand, the bittul of nature is only a temporary thing, as it were. And what has happened here is that the natural course has veered, has changed to reflect the will of Hashem as expressed in the Nes. However, Teva itself has not changed. The very etzem of Teva remains the same, like the etzem of the very nature of the serpent remains the same, uncooperative, or without a desire for a connection even. And yet he's doing what the master wants. Teva, despite itself, is doing what Hashem desires in this miracle invested in nature. There's an abrupt change of turn of events, which would not be the normal natural course. And nature is doing what Hashem wants. Statistically, naturally, these things wouldn't happen, like in the story of Esther, the chances of Esther being chosen, and all of the other events, each one on their own. In the story of Purim, the statistical chance of these things happening, then all tying together over the course of many, many years. The story of Purim, for example, took place over decades. All isolated events in their own right of what appeared to be insignificant, on the contrary, something negative. A Jewish girl, for example, is to become queen. But in the end, all of this turns out miraculously and changes what would have been, God forbid, the natural outcome. So it's despite Teva. Nonetheless, since because of the laws of nature, in nature left on its own, as it were, just by the very rules that God set up at the outset of creation. There's no room for this miracle. It just wouldn't happen. So why does it happen? So these miracles, like Purim, demonstrate that Hashem governs, rules, is the master of nature, and governs it according to his will. So that's the upshot of the bittul hayesh, that it's a true bittul, that there's no thanks to Teva here. There's no thank you to Teva. The thank you is to Hashem. Teva, despite itself, reflects his will. Where in the overt miracles, so there, Teva is completely dismissed, and we see the pure revelation of godliness. And that's like the minister, for example, the bittul b'metzias. Now Zion. So what's the chiddush that Hashem says? Then I will show you wonders. I will show you revelation and the wonders. Even the nisim that are invested in nature, that till now the sudden was that nature itself was really outside of it, just manipulated, and conceals the miracle. But then it'll be, I will show wonders, one will see it. So this Maila will be not only miracles invested in nature, that they will now see it in nature, but there's also going to be the Gilui of the Niflois themselves, as he goes on to explain now. Now, the fact that now, that nature conceals the miracle of the because nature, even when the miracle is invested in it, but nature still remains on the outside. It's the contrary to a miracle. Now, like we said before in Sif Hey, like we said before, that the change in nature is contrary to the nature of Teva. Therefore, here's the point. And therefore we see that open, overt miracles are greater revelation. But that's all now. This is all in the present. But the fact that all this will change, and that what will happen is that the nisim are invested in nature. Even the nisim in nature, for sure the nisim beyond nature remain, they're revealed. But even the nisim that are invested in nature will be by fandarde and on the floors, that will see the wonder. It will be awesome. You're not awed in the story of Purim. You got to put it all together, and then comes the wow factor. But there's no awe in each event. So each one in its own light is a natural event. It's concealed. But then there'll be Areno, Shehiras, and Neshama Teva will see the nest in the Teva, who Kilasid Lavai. Why will that be? Because when Mashiach will come, Teva will be elevated. The Teva itself will be a keli to the bligvul. And therefore, there'll be no concealment from the perspective of Teva, because Teva will be elevated and will transparently reveal the bligvul that is invested in it. So the Eved becomes, as it were, elevated, remains an Eved, but becomes elevated to the point that he willingly and lovingly and naturally expresses the will of the master, not against his will, but expressive of his will, still remaining an Eved. That's the higher level of Eved. The Eved Shur Ben, the mile of a servant, who also has the mile of the child, or in the illustration we gave earlier, the minister. And this is Shachidish Deren the Floy she lost Lovoi. It's amazing to me that I every morning virtually forget to turn on. All right. So this is the Chiddush Deren the Floy she lost Lovoi who Beria some Floys. First of all, in seeing the Niflois, the Gamba Niflois Atzmam, and even the level of the Niflois themselves, which is the point he started saying, beginning of Isaiah. It's also a difference in the Niflois themselves, because the Nisim Amalavashim Beteva Achshav, now the Niflois are invested in nature, and now they're in such a way, even after the fact that the Eibushter's infinite nature has been invested in them, hence the miracle. But nonetheless, Nisha Mitzias Teva Shmitzad Teva remains Shmitzad in Yoneh, from whose perspective it's the opposite of the Bligvol. So what happens is the Bligvol just wins the battle and manipulates it. And the Shagilu Bligvol Sheilit Allah. Now what's happening is that the Gilu Bligvol controls it. That nature, which should not behave in its usual course, but it should be the way God has now desired, and a net result is a miraculous outcome. That's the way it is now. That the Bligvul has to be shaylit on Teva. It has to manipulate. However, there's going to be a higher level of Bligvul when Mashiach comes, because there's no need to manipulate nature anymore. Where the nisim, it will be then, both virtues will happen, will fuse and become one. Namely, that the Eira Bligvol will be in Teva, but at the same time, but Teva itself is no resistance, nothing that would be contrary to that Bligvol. Because Teva itself would be refined and elevated in the Keli for the Bligvol and therefore not resisted. Again, like the Eved, who is also a Ben. Yeah, go further, folks. Okay. Hello? Yes. Yeah. Okay, 024301. Yeah, I'm going to ask you not to call this line because the family's still sleeping and it's, yeah, okay. All right, thank you, bye. Yes, V'yesh Lakasas in my Yudua connected to that which is known. Shalosid Lovai Tia Neshama and Zenis Malkut. This is a big statement that is only found in Chassidus, and that is that Lasid Lovai, the Neshama, will be nourished from the Guf. This is also connected to all of this. How so? The Achshav Guf Nizim Neshama. Now, of course, the body is animated and nourished by the soul. And in the future, the neshama will be nourished by the guf. He now explained that even though then also the guf remains physical, it will be directly nourished by godliness, and will not require physical food and drink. That's number one. And moreover, it will be even loftier than the neshama, because the neshama will be nourished from the guf. The matter is as follows. So the guf is nourished directly by likus, and the neshama is nourished by the guf itself. So what is the explanation? There's parallels what we've been talking about till now. The bitla guf likus, because the guf's bitl, that's the bitl of bitl ayesh, yichud tato, magil l'mayli yosim, bitl neshama, is a deeper bitl and is expressive of a purer expressive of the truth of a likus more than the neshama. Because, as we explained, Tzeischa neshama b'teil likus. The fact that the neshama is nullified to Hashem, acknowledges, recognizes, is in union with Him. In Mekiven Shir here Ruchnius, since the neshama itself is a spiritual being, a spiritual entity, habitl shelo kosher mitziyusa. Each bitl is part of its own very. It needs this, as it were. Its whole being calls out and says, "I want and need and want nothing else, and need nothing else but a relationship with God." So it's a bittul that's connected with its own desire, its own mitzias, its own identity. True, it wants nothing else, but it wants. It wants, the neshama wants. However, the guf doesn't want. The guf at the outset does not desire. But then through avodah we affect this bittul, kabbalah soya, bittul zeh. So the guf surrendered to likus, thanks to itself. Again, it's despite itself. And therefore, this moment is a pure expression of what Hashem wants than what the neshama expresses. This, by the way, is analogous to the difference between mitzvahs aseh and mitzvahs lo aseh, which is why mitzvahs lo aseh are higher, explaining chassidus, than mitzvahs aseh, because mitzvahs aseh is I'm doing, and I'm being mamshech likus through my act. Mitzvahs lo aseh says I make way for likus. So the gilu likus that happens when I don't do is purer. That's God revealing Himself on His terms. Whereas mitzvahs aseh, relatively speaking, since I'm a partner, it's dependent on my kavanah and my act and so on. So on some level, it's amshocha v'likus that is filtered through me and by me, and hence, relatively speaking, limited. It's all, everything is relative. Mitzvahs aseh mamshech malak alalmin, and mitzvahs lo aseh sevev kalam. Makif. At any rate, it's a similar idea. Why? Because it's about putting self aside and making room for Hashem on His terms. Now, Manas Friedman gives another very nice illustration for this. Two scenarios. One scenario is in a marriage, again, which is always the perfect and appropriate model. So it's his wife's birthday, and he knows what she likes, and he goes out and buys her this beautiful gift that she's expressed a desire for. And he gets it, and it's beautifully wrapped and so on, and he buys it for her and gives it to her. And she opens the gift, and she's delighted with the gift that he bought her. And he's watching all of this and having so much naches and enjoying the moment. And it's a very tender, loving moment. Scenario one. Scenario number two, he's playing, let's say he's at a fabrengen. He's at a fabrengen with the boys, and it's a beautiful fabrengen. He's having a good time. He's inspired. But his wife asked him to be home by 11 o'clock. And actually, he's about to say something, to share something at the fabrengen that everyone's going to enjoy. A beautiful story, something that happened to him or something that he heard. He looks at his watch. It's 5 to 11. Sorry, boys, gotta go. Gets up and leaves. That's it. Comes home. His wife could be sleeping already, but she asked him to be home by 11, and that's it. So which moment is more her? Which moment expresses his marriage more? Marriage means commitment to somebody else. So we all appreciate the second scenario. The first one, on the one hand, he gave her, he invested, he bought. He didn't give her or invest anything in the second scenario. He just came home by 11. But the first one, he enjoyed it, and it's connected with his mitzias. He knows what she wants, but he bought the gift. There was choices. He got the best one, and he got in the most beautiful packaging. He wrote a beautiful card. So it is a necessary, we're not dismissing its value, but it's a moment, ava. In the words of the Alter Rebbe, ava is yesh misha oyer. There's the one who loves. That's the whole nature of love, is I love you. It isn't disembodied love. It's I love you, but I love you. But that moment when he simply said goodbye and put, and put the l'chaim down and left, that moment is absolutely her. On the contrary, he'd rather stay. And for good reason. And could justify it. And probably get a pass. But he didn't. He didn't. He picked up and he left. So that moment is immeasurably deeper of his marriage, which means the connection to her, than the most loving moment. And that's the Maila again, another illustration of the Maila of Yichud Tata of Yichud Ilah. So now he's expressing the same model, Neshama and Guf. The Neshama's relationship and the Guf's relationship that comes through Avodah. So in the middle of that, let's finish it. But whereas the bitl kashapel, now the avodah again bitl beguf agashmi, but when we pale through avodah bitl in the guf agashmi, it's a bitl ze loy mitzad mitzvus shel aguf. This is not a bitl that the guf enjoys. El mitzad elikus, the person is kabbalah seil, and he's doing it. He gets up and does what he has to do, and the body's protesting. He wants to sleep longer, but he does it anyway. So that moment is a bitl mitzad elikus. What's the beauty of Elasid Lava? Now, that's all now. That's all analogous to miracles beyond nature, neshama, miracles in nature, guf. So that's analogous to the neshama, the bitl of the neshama, the bitl of the guf before Mashiach comes. The bitl of the neshama is because that's what it wants. I want elikus. I don't want anything else. Whereas by bitl daguf for bitl ayesh. Now the bitl ayesh, so it's despite the guf. The neshama is nourished, inspired, lifted by the guf. By bitl daguf, in the bitl of the body, tiyana shtei hamaylis, both virtues will be arenu niflois. It's not going to lose the truth that the bittul is all you. And yet, he's both simultaneously a loving child and a servant, which is usually a stira. Are you doing this out of service or out of love? But here is a service of love or a love of service. The bittul is purely, it's about you. And yet the entire being reflects you. And therefore the neshama's got to learn that and it's got to be nourished by it, because the bittul of the neshama has always been natural. It's always been something that neshama aspired and wants all its entire existence. And now it's going to learn and relate to and be lifted by the guf, that the bittul that it has and its desire will be recognized as being all you. To rephrase that in different words, that a person does tshuva. So the one hand tshuva is, I want. The truth is I always wanted, but I didn't know I wanted, and there was always this longing and emptiness that everybody experiences, the keil demama daka, the still small voice that everybody has, that is always pining for a relationship with Hashem. And he does tshuva. So on the one hand, that's melamata l'mayla, he does tshuva. That's reflective of his neshama that he always has. That's something I always wanted. What's shat neshama and zaynis min haguf? The mayla, that I'm going to recognize then that my tshuva is you too. My pining for you, that also is from you. To the whole tshuva, the neshama, the ruchnis dike avodah is with complete bittul, no thanks to me. It's all, and Pashat, he looks at his life, he recognizes the fact that he even did tshuva. It's all because this happened and that happened, and the Eibishter drew him near. This is the great shofar, the great shofar that will sound by Yemahu Yitaka b'Shofar Gadol, which is the tshuva of our generation. That the Rebbe said started with the 1967 war. The pasuk doesn't say who's blowing it; it just blows. It's happening because it doesn't say who, because it's the fusion of both the Yid and the Eibishter as one. Who's doing tshuva? Is Hashem drawing me, despite me? Or is this something I always wanted and I'm finally expressing? The answer is it's both. Something you always wanted, it's your Metzias and it's not your Metzias. And that the neshama is going to learn from the guf. Because the guf, clearly, it's not its Metzias. It's despite it. And the neshama, in its own longing and desire for likus, will appreciate that this longing and desire, this itself, is the Eibishter's gift and Hashem within him. 1 second. We'll conclude with this is also similar to the story. My brother actually just made a song, and if you saw it on COL, it's called The Gift. And it's reflective of the same idea. The story behind the story is that there was, I forgot his name, but there was an electrician who used to work in 770 in the 60s. He used to, the electrician fixing the fabrengas and so on. And one Friday, he was fixing something in the Rebbe's room. The story goes, he told the Rebbe that he's going, his family is going to know that he was together with the Rebbe in the Rebbe's room today. Could the Rebbe tell me something that I could share at my Shabbos table with my family? He was a well-known fellow. My Minkowitz remembers him well. So the Rebbe said to him like this. He pointed out what appears to be a contradiction in the Nishmas that we say every Shabbos and Yom Tov. Because what do we say in the Nishmas? We say that if our mouth was full of song like the sea, and our tongue like the waves, and our lips like the expansiveness of the sky, and our eyes luminous like the sun and the moon, and our hands spread out like the wings of heaven, and our feet as light as the deer, Ein Olam Aspikim, we would not be able to thank you and to bless you for all of the Elef Alfi Alofim, thousands and tens of thousands of goodness and miracles and wonders you've done for us and so on, starting with the Exodus. So we can't praise you, even if we had the most extraordinary means, like the skies and the heaven and so on, the stars and the moon. But then we say, immediately following, Al-Kain, therefore, the limbs that you have placed in us and the soul that you have blown into our nostrils and the tongue you have placed in our mouth, they will praise you and bless you and praise you and glorify and exalt you. We can or we can't. So the Rebbe explained by way of the famous mashal that my brother is singing in this song. And that is that a king was once in the forest on a walk, an expedition, and lost his way. And then he encounters a small hut, and it's the forester. And the forester shows him the path back to the palace. In expression of his gratitude, the king sends him a beautiful set of china. The forester receives this. This is totally beyond his whole world, and so he takes the china that the king has sent and he puts it away somewhere. One day he receives notice that the king is going to visit him. Now, how could he possibly be host to the king? And then he remembered that he has the china that the king had sent him. So he puts this out on the table, and with this, he welcomes the king. And that the Rebbe explains is the meaning. We, with our own capacities to praise and appreciate your blessings and gifts, we're unable. But if we recognize, and here's the diuk here, about the limbs that you have granted me. But I recognize that my soul is your gift, then I can praise you. So we praise Hashem, recognizing that the very ability to praise him is his gift. And that's the fusion of Yichud Yilo and Yichud Tato. That is the Neshama's tshuva, but the Neshama recognizing that its tshuva is Hashem's gift and not my own. And that's the Neshama, Losid Love, being nourished, learning that truth, that very deep truth from the Guf, because the Guf all along never claimed that it had any design. Everything it did was because, well, you're making me do this. I'm surrendering to your will. It's nothing I really want. So there's no illusions for the Guf ever. But now the Guf appreciates and reveals that truth in the deepest way, which the Neshama is also nourished by. Okay, the Ikir comes tomorrow. The Avodah today, nowadays, before Mashiach comes, as an integral achana and part of the process of the revelation of Lois and Niflois, Yedoy Lois Levadi, Aren and Niflois. That is Hashem tomorrow. Today,